Smoke coming from Canada across the border. They are, again, together when it comes to mitigating the wildfire risks, and they seem to forget that climate change is the responsibility of all nations, not just here in Canada. But they also don't seem to understand that Canadians are fighting massive wildfires here at home, while we also have resources assisting in areas such as Colorado. And it appears that we are having an audio issue. Bear with me one moment, folks, while we see if we can adjust that and see if we can fix our audio levels here. So bear with us just a quick moment, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just double check our audio settings to make sure, because on our end it shows well, but apparently in the studio it is not coming across as well. So let's just double check here where we're at. Let's go and see where we are having our issues. Let's just double check that. Can you just double check your end there? On your end there, Jesse, we seem to be all right on my end in terms of the signal range. So if you want to just double check your settings to make sure that we are okay there, and then we'll get on with the program. But we just want to make sure that everybody can hear us, of course. So we are just adjusting sound, ladies and gentlemen. Please bear with us just a moment. Test 1 2 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. Audio check 1 2 3. Let's see if that is coming across okay. And we can also restart if we need to, but we'll just see where we're at here. Testing 1 2 1 2. Audio check 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2. Checking audio level 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2. Oh, we're good now. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I had to go back. All right. So we seem to have an echo. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do anything about that part. It looks like we are fixed. So let's get started with the program. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on Primetime Live. And yes, we are live. So unfortunately, sometimes that comes with a bit of technical bugs that we need to work out. Now, as I was saying, Congress members are complaining about the wildfire smoke crossing the border into the U.S. from Canada, threatening us with becoming the 51st state if we don't get our act together, as they so state. What they seem to be glossing over is all of the wildfire smoke at times of the year that come up from the U.S. to blanket Canadian skies. Further to that, as we are fighting over 830 wildfires across Canada, they also are not mentioning the fact that we have Canadian resources and personnel in the U.S. assisting with fires, including the ones in Colorado, where a helicopter pilot from Canada lost his life fighting the wildfires in California. So again, just more hot air blowing in from the U.S. as our smoke travels south to visit them. And that is a shame, because of the fact that we are all responsible. As Prime Minister Mark Carney stated today, we are all responsible when it comes to climate change. And of course, with that comes the increased risk of wildfires, not just human caused, but of course, we've had lots of lightning strikes and such that have contributed to the number of fires across our great nation. Now, let's get started. Good evening, Lethbridge. You are watching Jess TV and listening in on Jess FM. Tonight, we are going to be looking at the top stories. And again, we would like to, again, off the top, thank our presenting sponsor, Carry Movers Limited. Whether you're moving across town or across the nation, Carry Movers is the company that shows the highest level of professionalism in moving your goods. We have a packed broadcast. So, again, if you are moving in the near future, contact Carry Movers online at www.karymovers.com and they will be happy to provide you with a quote and rates. Now, let's move on. Keeping our eyes on the sky tonight. Yes, Environment Canada has issued severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings earlier this afternoon for parts of southern Alberta. Meteorologists tracked a severe storm cell near Warner, roughly 65 kilometers southeast of Lethbridge, and it's moving at about 30 kilometers an hour. Officials warned that the system is capable of producing a tornado alongside damaging winds, large hail, and intense rainfall. While immediate threat has shifted, a severe weather watch remains in effect for the municipal district of Willow Creek, Fort Macleod, and right here in Lethbridge. Now, as we turn to local crime news, the Lethbridge police have made an arrest in connection with a brazen West Side shooting earlier this spring. Today, officers officially charged 19-year-old Emilio Jarlin Ganon Quinteros with multiple firearms offenses, including intentional and reckless discharge of a weapon. The charges stem from a May 10th incident at a home in Lafayette Boulevard, which police say was fraudulently rented as an Airbnb using fake names. During a large house party, a gunshot was fired through a second-story window following an altercation. Ganon Quinteros was already in custody on unrelated matters and is currently awaiting a bail hearing. Now, moving to the national stage, today in Delta, British Columbia, Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon announced a massive push to double Canada's exports. The government is referring to the Port of Vancouver Gateway Strategy to the Major Projects Office. The centerpiece is, of course, the Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project, which aims to boost the port's container capacity by 50%. Meanwhile, of course, trade tensions between Ottawa and Washington continue to simmer. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer stated yesterday that Trump's administration will not give Canada credit for recently dropping the digital services tax. Greer noted that rolling back the tax was simply good practice, and trade negotiations ahead of the CUSMA review, and those reviews, of course, remain largely stalled. And speaking of friction with our neighbors to the south, patience is wearing thin over Canadian wildfire smoke. Several U.S. lawmakers from border states are lashing out as smoke from Ontario fires. Excuse me, folks. Let's go back here. So, lashing out as smoke from the Ontario fires blanket the U.S. Midwest and Northeast. A Michigan state senator told Canada Online to learn to manage your forests or become the 51st state, while Ohio senator threatened to introduce a bill which would sanction the Canadian government. Prime Minister Mark Carney brushed off the criticism today, pointing out that climate change is a shared responsibility. Taking a look around the world tonight, there's finally a sliver of relief for global homeowners looking to refinance. Today, the average 30-year fixed refinance mortgage rate dropped by 19 basis points down to about 6.81%. Exports attribute the roller coaster rates to ongoing geopolitical tensions, driving up oil prices, which, of course, in turn fuels persistent inflation. On the global markets, we are seeing a sharp rotation of investments. Portfolios are shifting heavily away from AI hyperscalers and into the hardware suppliers. And for superstitious investors out there, market analysis and analysts are pointing out to a quirky historical trend. Global stock markets historically tend to underperform during World Cup years, which, of course, we are currently in the midst of hosting alongside the United States and Mexico. And we're going to just do a quick sponsor update once again. And then we're going to go into our primetime in depth report. We're taking a hard look at the 2026 Canadian wildfire season. We'll examine the devastating smoke impacts, honor the firefighters who have made the ultimate sacrifice, and of course, discuss a growing and illegal danger in the skies, and that is the unauthorized flight of drones in fire areas. This broadcast, once again, ladies and gentlemen, is brought to you by, of course, Carry Movers Limited. Make your next move your best move. Visit www.karymovers.com. Yes, that's carrymovers.com. Serving Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley for local relocations, and all of Western Canada and Northern Canada for long distance relocations. So again, Carry Movers, www.carrymovers.com, KARY Movers. And welcome back to our actual report here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go on to our in depth look at the wildfire situation. We can start tonight by taking a look at a letter that has been sent to Canada from several Congress members in the US. And it just shows how far up their ass that their heads really are when it comes to the logistical and practical complaints that they are sending to us in relation to wildfire smoke blanketing the US. In that regard, let's not forget that a Canadian helicopter and pilot were lost in the battle in Colorado recently. So we'll get into that as well. And we need to just understand that a lot of these complaints should and will fall on deaf ears, as it is just ridiculous that they are bringing up such silly complaints because we have no control over Mother Nature and, of course, the direction of wildfire smoke moving. Now, let's take a look here at this letter that has been sent to us, and we'll bring it up on screen so that you can see it as we go through it. Now, of course, they are complaining. Let's actually bring up a report here. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of different stations, including this report from ABC7 News, that again brings up the letter that was sent from Jack Bergman, John James, Lisa McCain, and John Mulliner. Now, they are citing repeated conversations with Canadian officials and previous letters, which have so far culminated in what they called a lack of meaningful progress. Now, the wildfire situation, again, the wildfires are managed and controlled or fought by provincial forest ministries. With that said, it's not the ultimate responsibility of the federal government, although they are taking steps to move forward with the purchase of new wildfire fighting capabilities and equipment that can be shared across provinces and allow us for further responses to the fires. Now, we are going to take a look at this letter, and I'll read it aloud just so that you can be sure to follow what is being said and such, because I know that some of you are watching on a small screen, and thus it is harder for you to read. So I'll go through it as we look. Now, again, it's sent from the Congress of the United States, and I've already named those who signed it, but we'll look at that again at the end. And it was addressed to Prime Minister Mark Carney, and it was sent out yesterday. Now, the letter goes as follows, and I will read it as it's written. Dear Prime Minister Carney, we write today as members of Michigan's congressional delegation to raise our voices on an issue that has already drawn letters from our colleagues in past years: wildfire smoke drifting across the border from Canada into our communities. Additionally, last year, Reps James and Bergman each wrote letters to your government to raise the alarm about wildfire smoke pouring across our border from Canada into our communities. We write jointly this time because a year has passed, the season has come around again, and nothing has changed except that our patience has run out. Our constituents in Michigan are once again under air quality alerts. Our hospitals are once again treating children, dialysis patients, and older residents for the effects of smoke that did not originate anywhere near them. This is the third consecutive year we've had to write Canadian officials about a crisis that Canada has the tools to prevent and has chosen not to. We were told last year that this would be treated with urgency. It was not. We were told the causes chronic underinvestment in forest thinning, fuel reduction, and prescribed burns, along with inadequate enforcement against arson, were being addressed. They were not or are not adequately enough to matter to the people we represent. Provincial leaders have offered excuses instead of results, and in some cases have openly dismissed the health of American citizens as an inconvenience to their own summer. This attitude is unacceptable from a neighbor and an ally. Excuse me. Excuse me. We're done accepting apologies in place of action. If Canada will not manage its forests to prevent these fires, the United States will look elsewhere and act on our own to protect our people. That means our own agencies exploring direct involvement in cross border fuel reduction and firefighting capability. It means reconsidering how much benefit of the doubt this relationship continues to earn on an issue where American lungs are paying the price for Canadian inaction year after year. Sovereignty comes with responsibility, and the responsibility to prevent a foreseeable disaster from crossing into another country's airspace has not been met. We are asking for specifics, not sentiment. What funded, measurable steps has your government taken since last summer to reduce fuel loads and wildfire risks in the provinces responsible for the smoke reaching the American Midwest? What accountability exists for provincial leaders who treat this as someone else's problem? And what will genuinely be different this time next year rather than another season of statements followed by the same results? And it closes off, ladies and gentlemen, by saying we remain ready to work with Canada in good faith as two nations with a long history of standing together. But that history does not entitle Canada to another year of excuses. Our constituents are breathing the consequences of this failure right now, and they deserve better than to be told again that it will be handled. Sincerely, John James, Member of Congress, John R. Moulinar, Member of Congress, Jack Bergman, Member of Congress, and Lisa C. McLean, Member of Congress. So it just shows how absolutely up their ass their heads are, because once again, Canada spends millions of dollars a year trying to mitigate forest fire risks and, of course, battling the wildfires to extinguish them as quickly as possible as they happen. With 830 fires currently burning across the nation, yes, there is a lot of smoke. Yes, there is a lot of damage. Yes, the forests are being burned, but I do not hear the Americans thanking us for our forests that clean the air, that produce oxygen. And of course, that clean air and oxygen flows across two US states. And once again, it's a shared responsibility, absolutely. Will this mean that if we do not take further steps to rake our forests, as ridiculous as that was once proposed by Donald Trump, we will not become the 51st state? We will stand for our sovereignty here in Canada, while at the same time, we do not start lashing out at the US when their wildfire smoke from states such as Oregon, Washington, down as far as California or Colorado, Utah, any of these states that have wildfires. Again, it's up to the individual states to manage their forests, their resources, and to battle the wildfires that happen within their states, much like it is the responsibility of provinces here in Canada. Can more be done? Well, I think that the answer to that is an unequivocal yes. Every state, every province, every region, every government has a responsibility to try to mitigate disasters before they happen. And of course, with that, there is, no matter how much goodwill or intent, positive intent is meant, you can't control Mother Nature. And that, unfortunately, is the reality. Canada is a massive, massive region with forests from the US border right up to the Arctic Ocean, and from the Pacific all the way to the Atlantic. We are a major nation when it comes to the size and political areas, we of course have to put up with neighbors as well. And you don't hear us complaining about a lot of the shit that's going on in the US right now when it comes to the politics. Yes, we do reach out and try to share ideas and our frustration with some of the things going on, of course. But again, for those who live in glass houses, they should not be throwing stones. Now, let's take a look at some of the other reports that are coming to us from the US and here in Canada. Of course, it is a concern for all Canadians, Americans, and people around the world. The forest fires are burning, and it is a really big issue. But also, let's not forget that people are losing their homes, communities are being destroyed. Sensitive ecological zones are being destroyed by fire. But at the end of the day, there's also a part of that that is the circle of nature, where some forests may be destroyed. It allows for new vegetation growth, for a renewal of the forest, for the continued development of this planet that we call Earth and we all call home. So it's about coming together, working together, and of course, bringing different solutions to the table. This is something that we've been looking at for many, many years, and we'll continue to work with not only in Canada, but with our global partners, including those in the US, to see what we can do to reduce the damage and the impacts of climate change, but also the severity and risks of forest fires. We know that these are an issue. We know that the smoke is not healthy. And of course, we know that with that, there is some toxic smoke that ends up in the air, that the particulates are dangerous to those who are suffering from asthma, from COPD, or other suppressed immune systems that can be impacted by these particulates that are out there. So again, we're not blind to the risks, we're not blind to the problem. We are taking steps that we can take. Are there more? Absolutely. Every government can take more steps, but again, it is all about coming together to find those solutions. Now, let's take a look at a news report from EPTN, and this is about the community in shock as their community was lost to wildfires in northern Ontario. Again, something that we've seen in British Columbia when the town of Lytton burnt down almost 5 years exactly to the day. It was June the 30th that Lytton, British Columbia was lost to wildfire and is still recovering to this day. It is not fully recovered. Only about 50% of the structures have been rebuilt, and yet they are facing more catastrophic damage from wildfires this year as they have in years between the Great Fire and to this date. They've seen a lot of evacuations and damage that continues to happen in that area. So let's take a look at this report, as I said, from APTN that deals with or talks about the response or the reaction, sorry, of the community that's been lost in Northern Ontario as we take a look at that now.
Cousineau First Nation, otherwise known as Collins, have all safely arrived in Thunder Bay. Chief Helen Pavla says some residents are staying with relatives while others are living in hotels.
We know that it's going to be long term. So although we are doing immediate things, we are also looking at long term. I am currently looking for rental houses and stuff like that to put my people in because there is no homes to go back to. The community has been completely devastated.
Chief Pavla says the lingering wildfire smoke in Thunder Bay has been triggering for the evacuees. Images, videos, and stories of a community barely escaping the flames have been circulating. Stephen Roy was there in the hours before the fire arrived.
So we went to the dump, me and him went and threw our garbage, and we could see the smoke. It was a long ways away. So we went back and we went and had supper, and then we were still waiting for the waves. And then all of a sudden you could hear it just like a freight train just coming towards us.
Roy said they had been waiting for the waves to die down on the water, but the approaching fire prompted them to leave right away, with concerns the boats might tip over during the crossing. Once on the shore, Roy says the smoke and flames continued to chase them.
We could still see that smoke just coming, so we just drove as fast as we can there out of there, and then we can still see that smoke and that fire just coming towards where we were. So it was quite an experience there, especially with her making sure all these little guys. He was with me. He stayed pretty calm. He was good.
Residents describe their community as close-knit, with some having lived there all their lives.
You're close to the land when you're there. Yeah, and I think that's why Mom didn't want to move, but then she has to move now. Our houses were really close together. Mine, like, I could just hop into her house from my house where we were. We shared the same lot, and so every time I'd go home, she'd have my house warm, like she'd make fire for us in winter.
I've lived there all my life, and I've never lived anywhere else. I was born in my grandfather's strapline. I've lost everything. Like, I had a lot of pictures of my grandchildren and my grandparents. All that is gone. My great-grandchildren, I had a lot of pictures of them. But all that is gone now, and I even had my great-granddaughter's Tikanagan. I was keeping that. There was nice beadwork on it. So that's gone. No, I don't really know if I'm ever going to see home again. If my health fails me, then I won't be able to go back.
Chief Pavela says her community is holding together as best it can.
And my apologies, folks. I forgot to hit my mic. So, yeah, as I said, these stories are really heartbreaking and heart wrenching because these communities have lost a history, a shared community that has been there for generations. They have lost the personal stories of the different artifacts that are held in those communities as very much impacted. And again, it's not just the immediacy of losing structures, but all of their personal items that have been passed down generation to generation that tell a story of not just the First Nations, but of all people across the country. These are historic stories that convey a rich history of the country and of the First Nations that cannot be recovered, that may be lost to history forever. And that is very touching and very sad. I know that several years back when the town of Lytton burned down, I was there as a journalist. I was on the lines covering that story and watching in helplessness as a complete town and history was burnt to the ground within 24 hours. This is devastating, and can't understate the personal impacts to the communities and the individuals and future generations that have lost the history of their community. And of course, with that, as I said, we need to really just ignore the noise from certain Congress members in the US that are threatening to take over Canada, take over our resources and resource management, when in reality, they're not doing enough to mitigate disasters in their own nation and to respond to help people that are impacted. So again, we just kind of brush that aside and continue doing the best that we can, while of course always monitoring and looking at what we can do better. Now, over the last year, there's also been a new system that is in pilot phase, literally and figuratively. And that, of course, is the drone projects and satellite imaging with the combined use of artificial intelligence. This can help us to identify hotspots and zones where there is an increased level of fires breaking out. It also helps to monitor for heat and other indicators that smaller fires have started earlier than the traditional means of detection. This allows us to respond quicker and to allocate resources where they need to be. A lot of people are asking why they don't just blanket everything in fire retardants and water and just have the bombers going. And the reality is that the fire bombers and the aircraft, as well as the helicopters, can be used and they can be great tools, but they are not the most effective use of resources in certain areas. The smoke, the fire, the conditions, the weather, there's a lot of things that also contribute to whether or not those resources can be deployed at any given time. At other points, people are complaining that they see helicopters maybe sitting on the tarmac at airports or landing zones close to fires and not being used. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this. Again, it could be weather, it could be smoke, it could be outside conditions that are prohibitive to putting aircraft in the air for that purpose. There's also the fact that the aircraft themselves have to go under rigorous and continuous inspections to ensure that they are safe to fly in those zones, and they have to be continually inspected. That keeps the firefighters, the aircraft operating crews and pilots, as well as the general public safe when those are deployed into the skies. There's also the fact that the pilots and the crews must have a maintained rest period. This is a mandatory requirement, not an optional one. And therefore, we need to make sure that we look after the firefighters and the air crews to make sure they are properly rested in order to keep them safe in the skies as well. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. As for just willy-nilly dropping water loads from the sky, it also takes into account that when you drop that massive amount of water, you've got to be looking at what is being dropped upon. The massive amounts of water or fire retardants and the weight of that and the pressure of it dropping from the skies can cause more damage to the structures down below and the ground. So it could cause washouts, it could cause slides, it could cause, a lot of different factors that could increase the dangers to the communities around and the forests around. So again, it is a very strategic resource to be managed. It's not just about going out and just throwing water everywhere. It's about managing the fires, the wind speeds, the wind directions. It's about managing the fight to try and have the best impact and to reduce the damage while keeping communities safe and the crews safe. So again, a lot of factors that come into play here. Let's take a look at another report from the about the wildfires here, and we'll take a look this time at CTV News here in Canada and how the displaced Ontario wildfire victims are fleeing to safety in Thunder Bay. Let's remember that some of the communities, such as the last one that we just watched the report on, are accessible by boat. They have to also consider the water conditions when they are evacuating. And unfortunately, that is a point where some people just didn't have a choice. They had to get in the boats and evacuate regardless of conditions. So again, causing other safety concerns as well when we look at the potential need to rescue people that may get capsized or stranded on the open water. So again, a lot that goes into play here, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just as simple as many people wish that it was. And of course, that's all of us. We all wish it was much easier and that we were able to mitigate and extinguish these fires quicker. There's also, of course, the concern for wildlife and a lot of wildlife areas that are destroyed. The environments, the ecosystems, it all comes into play that we are losing to these wildfires every season. And as climate change continues and global warming continues, we're going to see an increased pattern. Today, the province of Alberta and the weather reports were coming out. There were weather warnings that were out due to the potential for tornadoes, as well as lightning storms that, of course, could increase the risks of increased fires and disaster throughout the province, especially in the southern parts of Alberta at this time. So we have to keep into fact in our minds that these risks are greater than just as some people, as I said, want to make it seem that it's just an easy problem that they have, so many solutions for. And it's always easy to, armchair quarterback the plays. But again, it is a lot more complicated, and we need to watch that. So let's take a look at this report from CTV News about the displacement and evacuations of those in Ontario that are fleeing to Thunder Bay.
Well, Sandy, we are hearing some of the stories of the people who have escaped these fires, some losing everything, many unsure of when they might be able to return home.
The image is harrowing. A boy and his dog in a tin boat fleeing an enormous fire.
The flames would just jump in, and it's very scary.
Chance Pavola and his family spend every summer at Collins First Nation, a community about 200 kilometers from Thunder Bay. He says they initially thought a fire burning nearby would bypass them, but then the winds shifted and they had little time to get out.
I was still in disbelief. I couldn't believe that the fire was burning right in Collins, and it was just scary knowing that people could have been left behind.
The chief of Collins First Nation says every member of her community is a hero. Everyone escaped and no one was seriously injured.
It was just a matter of minutes before my members would have died. And, even during that whole time, there was no help. We had no help. They had no help, and they had to do it on their own, and they did.
Thousands of people in Northwest Ontario have been forced from their homes due to fast-moving wildfires. Many more have been told to be ready to leave as strong winds threaten to make an already terrible situation worse.
Night was difficult.
David Ogle and Kevin Stovall were in the midst of a canoe trip when they noticed smoke getting closer and closer. They alerted their outfitter, but the fire moved too quickly for them to get to a nearby lake to be rescued by a float plane. A helicopter was dispatched, but it couldn't land due to visibility.
That's when they told us to stay put at that spot for 24 hours.
The two friends from Texas spent the night in their canoe, ready to paddle out to water if the flames got too close.
Man, ashes started falling on us. Smoke was getting thicker. It was getting harder to breathe.
They were eventually rescued, but lost most of their belongings as their base camp burned to the ground. The Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources says there are 180 active fires in the province, 136 here in the Northwest region. 63 are considered out of control.
About 15 communities here in northwestern Ontario have begun evacuations or are considering them, many not accessible by road. Ontario has asked for planes to be ready with less than 24 hours notice should more people need to be rescued. Sandy.
Heather, thank you. CTV's Heather Wright in Thunder.
So again, thank you to CTV for that report, and we appreciate being able to share that with you and showing just the magnitude of the fires, not just in Ontario, but as we go coast to coast. Once again, folks, it is a devastating time for people across the nation. If you are interested in contributing to assist those in need and people that are requiring assistance, you can always go to propixcanada.com and donate to the ProPix Canada Media Fund for Good. And that's at www.propicscanada.com. Once again, you can click on the link there to contribute to the PPCM Fund for Good, and we'll be keeping you abreast of those conditions and changing wildfire situation as it goes on. But as we continue, ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of other reports coming in, and I wanted to show another report that's from AsiaNet News English. So it shows that it's hitting worldwide headlines, but this actually shows some harrowing footage of a train that was caught in the wildfire zones. And yeah, you won't believe what you see in this video. It's just unbelievable, the fire and the situation there. So let's take a look at this report again. That is from Asia, and it just shows how far the news is hitting from around the world, or hitting around the world from here in Canada. So we'll take a look at this. It's just unbelievable.
This could potentially overtake us here. This is getting a little scary.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Okay. Yeah, this is.
Okay, y'all need to hurry up here. Like, seriously, we're encased in flames now.
You guys gotta go backwards. Go.
Hello, Jody, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you there. I'm telling you, we're notching up.
Yeah, this has got to move fucking quick here. Holy crap. Oh, that's all right. This kind of burnt off, so we'll be okay now. Yeah.
Shit.
Oh, yeah, look over there.
You
guys got a light now or what? Did you guys get that light? Oh, yeah, they're clipping. Whew! That's a meat and a half, eh?
So as you can see, I mean, even from the satellite images, you can see the fires burning, the smoke just traveling throughout the province, and of course, again, down to the south into the United States. Let's take a moment here to look at some of the hazards, or talk about some of the hazards when you are in a community that's impacted by wildfires. You can go in, and amazingly, you'll see houses that are still standing while everyone else in their neighborhood has lost everything, and it's nothing but a chimney standing where people's homes and their belongings used to be. Now, when you do return home, if you are in a zone that's been impacted by wildfire, you have to keep in mind that there could be risks to returning home. You could have, of course, gas leaks, so make sure that your gas is off from the main terminal at the outside of your home. Make sure that if you are looking at any water that is in your home, that you are ensuring that your power is off. You could step into a bit of water or touch something in the home that is conducting electricity. And again, the potential of electrocution is there as well. Keep in mind also that if you go into a home that may have a basement where water has pooled and flooded from the wildfire fighting efforts or bursted pipes or any other reasons, keep in mind that you could also get sewer backups. That creates a risk of different pathogens and different disease or bacteria that could have backed up into your home as well through the sewer system backups. So again, there's a lot of risks involved. When you're returning home to an area that's been impacted by wildfires, you also want to keep in mind that there is a higher risk to people that have immune deficiency or lung issues such as COPD, asthma, and so forth, and an increased risk for pregnant women. So, again, keep that in mind as the risks are real and the health concerns are important to pay attention to. With pooling water as you enter into a basement that may be flooded, keep in mind that things may not be on shelves or counters that were before. And therefore, under that murky water, there could be risks of things to be stepped on. It could be sharp objects that have broken and fallen into the water and settled on the floor. You could be stepping on very sharp and dangerous objects. So again, you need to be aware of that, as well as any, as I said, sewer backup and that carries potential risk for bacteria and other concerns. This is something also to keep in mind when you are starting to clean. Again, there could be toxic elements that were airborne, the particulates that have settled into the soot and ash that is now inside your homes. And as you clean, you want to wear some type of mask to protect your respiratory system. And remember that there is, of course, an increased risk of exposure to different contaminants and carcinogens that could cause cancer in individuals. So again, you want to be aware of all of those risks. Also be aware if you have pets, you don't want them drinking from the still water. You don't want them splashing around in the puddles and such. You want to be aware that they could be contaminated and keep your pets safe. When it comes to food, of course, refrigerators and freezers may have gone without power, so that food may have gone bad, but also consider that the extreme heat could have impacts of certain canned foods and other foods. When you look at the packaging or the cans and the liners and all of that, you could have from that exposed temperature changes in the molecular structure of the food in those containers or leaching of chemicals and concerning agents from cans, aluminum, from the liners, all of that. So again, you want to be aware that just because an item is in a can, if it's been exposed to extreme heats, it could change that and again be a health concern. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind when it comes to returning after disasters and to try and start recovery. It's always such a big emotional strain on families and individuals that when you return home or to your business that has been impacted by these community and these national disasters, you want to get in. You want to start evaluating the damage. You want to get in and start, cleaning up and recovering. But again, you've got to take a pause to ensure that you understand the safety equipment, the safety steps, and the hazards that await you when you do return. So again, take time to understand the hazards and how to do so safely, ladies and gentlemen. It is, I can't explain or emphasize enough how much risk there is when you return. So again, make sure that you do so in a safe mode. I know you're anxious. I know you want to get in and start cleaning, evaluating, and assessing damage. But again, make sure that you are safe. When it comes to being in evacuation zones or potentially under evacuation warnings, you want to gather items, medications, any insurance documents and paperwork, deeds, and so forth that you want to have available if you need to evacuate. You want to have bottles of water, some snacks and food, because as you evacuate and travel to the evacuation zones or the emergency centers, you want to make sure that you are prepared. Now, this also goes to stand if you are taking a road trip this summer and you are traveling more than an hour from home. It is strongly suggested that you never allow your fuel tank to be less than half, because if you get stranded, rerouted, or in evacuation situations, you want to make sure that you have enough fuel to sustain yourself. Maybe a road closure, you could be there for 24 or 48 hours. You want to be prepared. In your vehicle, even if you're going just a couple hours from home, you want to have emergency kits with snacks, with water, with emergency blankets, and of course, make sure that your personal devices, such as cell phones, are fully charged at all times, so that this way, if an emergency happens, you have the ability to communicate should cell service still be available or mobile data. Of course, we know that in some zones, the towers for communication, whether that's cell phones or otherwise, can be damaged and cut off communication as well. So it's very important to keep your options there. Make sure that you have a radio if possible, because if you lose your cell phone signal, you can still keep abreast of the ongoing situation and tune in for emergency alerts and evacuation directions. So a lot of things to digest and to keep in mind when it comes to the wildfire situation. When it comes to the coverage of wildfires, many people seem to think it's okay to get drone coverage for their social media and to increase their clicks and their likes and their exposure on social media. But keep in mind that not only are you risking lives and the ability to fight those fires by launching a drone in those wildfire zones, it is also a federal crime. You are not allowed to fly within emergency zones. It's called restricted airspace at that point. You can be charged and you can face very severe criminal charges and liability should you be flying a zone in any area that is considered an emergency no-fly zone. The risks, of course, are that the drones could interfere with the firefighting capabilities of helicopters and airplanes. Once a drone is detected within the area, they have to ground those aircraft. They have to put them on the ground so that they can get those drones out of the way, because they pose a direct and significant risk to the air firefighting crews and equipment, and could cause crashes and catastrophic results. So again, keep your damn drones out of the restricted space when there is an emergency going on. It interferes and can delay life saving and property saving responses. It can interfere with a break in the weather, where there is a break in heavy winds, where the firefighters can make extreme levels of progress, and instead they are grounded because some idiot has their drone in the sky. So again, I can't emphasize enough, the footage that you are capturing and the clicks that you're getting on your social media are not worth the lives of those who are risking all to fight those fires. It is so important to keep the drones away from the wildfire airspace, period. Now, let's take another look at a report on the wildfires coming again out of Ontario. This is from the Daily Forecast Canada, and we'll take a look at this. And again, if you want to follow up with the full reports, because we're only airing part of these reports, you can go to ctv.ca. You can go to APTN TV News. You can go to a lot of different sites online to get updates from reputable sources. Again, make sure that your news is coming from a reputable source, not just somebody online posting, their opinions and biased information. Again, make sure you're going to reputable sources to get your information about these wildfires and the reactions. And also, if you're in areas, make sure that you're paying attention to evacuation orders and evacuation alerts. I know that some people don't want to leave their homes during evacuation orders, but again, you are putting yourself and first responders at risk, because if it turns that you need to be rescued, they A, may not be able to get to you, and B, you're putting their lives on the line to rescue you should you decide to stay in your residence or your business during an evacuation order. So again, just keep that in mind, that it's not just your life that you are sacrificing or putting at risk. You are putting at heavy risk those who are responding. And your concern should not just be about yourself, it should be about the community. And that includes first responders. And again, I can't emphasize that enough. So let's take a look at this report once again. This is covering Ontario, but again, it is just as much valuable information for everyone else here in Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the prairies, all across the prairies, across the Maritimes, up north. It is wildfire season, ladies and gentlemen. We need to take this seriously, and we need to come together to help each other in these times of disaster. So let's take a look at that before we close out the show tonight.
Wildfires are burning across Ontario. 74 of those fires are completely out of control. And the heat that drove this crisis just shattered an all-time record in Northern Ontario. Armstrong hit 40.7 degrees Celsius yesterday, an absolute all-time high for that community. Environment Canada has issued heat warnings across most of Ontario, and the Ministry of Natural Resources says fire danger is at extreme levels across the Northwest, because whether you're in Thunder Bay, Toronto, or anywhere in between, this affects you today. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is your Ontario weather and wildfire briefing for Wednesday, the 15th of July, 2026. We have a lot to cover today, so I want to break this down region by region, starting in the Northwest, where the situation is most critical. All right, let's start in Northwestern Ontario, because that is ground zero for everything happening right now. As of last night's official update from the Ministry of Natural Resources, there are 148 active wildland fires in the Northwest region alone. Of those 148 fires, 69 are not under control. 26 new fires were confirmed just yesterday, July 14th. To put that in perspective, on July 12th, the Northwest region had 102 active fires. 2 days later, that number jumped to 148. That is a 45% increase in active fires in 48 hours. And the reason for that explosion in fire activity comes down to one thing: the heat. The Northwest region has been baking under an extreme multi-day heat event, with temperatures climbing into the upper 30s and low 40s. That kind of heat dries out the forest floor incredibly fast. And once you add wind into the equation, fire activity jumps fast. 45% more active fires in just 48 hours. Now let's talk about the fires of note, the ones the ministry is watching most closely. Red Lake 24 is one of the biggest. It has grown to 3,079 hectares and is not under control. That's near McDowell Lake in the Red Lake District, and this fire is behaving aggressively. Fort Francis, 14 near Byers Lake, roughly 35 kilometers southwest of Uppsala, has reached 1,749 hectares, also not under control, and there is actually a no dam in effect around this fire. That means if you're a pilot, all civilian air traffic within 5 nautical miles and up to 3,000 feet above ground level is restricted. Only fire suppression aircraft are permitted in that airspace. Right next door, Fort Francis, 15 inches, Quetico Provincial Park has also hit 1,751 hectares, not under control. These two fires together are anchoring the worst of the crisis in the Atikakan corridor. Moving to the Nipigon sector, and this one is deeply concerning because of proximity to communities. Nipigon 45 and 46 have merged into a single 1,200 hectare fire located approximately 10 kilometers southeast of Iba-Mettong First Nation, also known as Fort Hope. This fire is not under control, and the fact that it is this close to a community is extremely serious. Nipigon 50 has grown to 730 hectares near Miminisca Lake, also not under control. And we have a cluster of new Nipigon fires confirmed just last night. Nipigon 51, 52, and 53 north of Wababimiga Lake, all not under control. The Sioux Lookout sector is also seeing significant activity, with Sioux Lookout 92, a 60 hectare fire on Kagami Island in the Albany River being observed. Sioux Lookout 95 near Highway 599 south of Jabez Lake is a 4 hectare fire that is not under control. And Sioux Lookout 96 between Highway 599 and the Albany River near Rat Rapids is also not under control. Now, what does all this mean for people on the ground? The Ontario Provincial Police have issued mandatory evacuation orders for multiple communities, and those orders are in effect right now. If you are in Armstrong, you must evacuate. If you are in White Sand First Nation, you must evacuate. Lac des Mille Lacs First Nation, Collins First Nation, also known as Namegu-Sisagagoon and Cushing Lake, are all under mandatory evacuation orders. Lac LaCroix First Nation, Gakijiwanong, and Gold Bay First Nation, Kiashkezaging, Anishinaabeg were added to the evacuation list as of Tuesday. The OPP is telling anyone in these communities who needs evacuation assistance to call 911. And if you're
So again, if you are in evacuation zones and are unable to evacuate, contact 911, contact your local police, fire, or emergency services. Let them know. They can make arrangements to assist you to get you out of there. We know that there were some individuals, I believe it was from Texas, in the earlier report there that we looked at, that were stuck in a canoe, and they were trapped overnight. They ended up being rescued by a helicopter when conditions allowed that. So again, the conditions are dire, ladies and gentlemen. Stay aware, stay alert, and stay prepared. If you are in one of those regions, just know that you're not alone. The rest of the country and people around the world are watching and praying for you at this hour. Keep in mind, again, mandatory evacuations are in place, and more will probably be announced in the coming days. So pay attention to what's going on. Please, again, honor the evacuation orders. You don't want to be stuck in an area because you wanted to stay with your home and try to fight it alone. And then you put at risk the lives of first responders who have to come in and rescue you. And again, it can also delay the response by overhead firefighting efforts. So again, be safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. Be aware, be alert. And again, just be patient. We know it's a tough time out there. We know that even for communities that are not impacted directly by the fires, they are being impacted by the wildfire smoke. Try to wear masks if you feel that your health is at risk because of heavy wildfire smoke. Also, stay indoors, keep windows closed, and just try to manage yourself when it comes to exposure to the wildfire smoke and potential particulates that are in the air. Of course, long-range forecasts predict continued above average temperatures across the nation and below average precipitation, especially for the boreal forest regions. We're not out of the woods yet. And in fact, we may be just entering into the deepest part of the crisis. We ask everyone to remain vigilant, respect local fire bans, obey evacuation orders immediately when they're issued, and above all, keep your damn drones out of the sky. That concludes our primetime live in-depth report. I am James Cousineau. Thank you for spending your evening with us here on Jess TV and Jess FM. We want to send a final thank you, of course, to our presenting sponsor, Carry Movers Limited. Whether you're relocating your family or your business, rely on the professionals who care. May your next move be your best move. Visit www.karymovers.com to request your quote today. And again, we also acknowledge and thank Carry Movers for their work over the years to assist wildfire victims in Alberta and British Columbia. The work that they have done to support victims of wildfires in communities over the past years has been nothing less than heroic. So thank you, Carry Movers, and all of the team members there. Once again, Carry Movers providing local and long distance moving services, local services in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, and long distance relocation services all across BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and of course the Yukon. Contact Carry Movers to discuss the needs for your next move. Once again, from all of us here at Jess TV and Jess FM in Lethbridge, Alberta, stay safe, ladies and gentlemen. Look out for your neighbors and have a good night. Take care and stay safe. Thanks for joining us yet once again here on Jess.